Today we sat down with Connor Evans. He's the CEO of Elite Physical Therapy here in Wichita. We discussed his career and the overall fitness industry, and we really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do the same. Awesome. We're up. I've been looking forward to this, man. Connor, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, I've got a lot of respect for people, especially in our age group, that take a leap of faith and really go for something, whether that's fitness, business, or anything else, really. Take me through the process of you wanting to start this and how quickly you decided to take the entrepreneurial route.
So it was interesting. It was when I was in my second year of PT school. PT school's 3 years. Second year is when COVID hit. So all of our schooling shifted from in-person to online. When we did that, we knew that my rotations, mind you, I went to PT school in Kansas City. We knew that we were going to move back to Wichita after I graduated, because we wanted to start a family. We wanted to be nearby family when we had a baby around. So once we shifted to virtual learning, we started looking for a home in Wichita because I figured the rest of schooling I was going to be able to be wherever and still participate. So my second year is when we were house hunting because my rotations were all in Wichita, which was great. So we bought a house, moved to Wichita, and then they started lifting the COVID guidelines. And so I was living in Wichita, but then we were having in-person classes in Kansas City. So what I had to do was 2 or 3 days a week, do a day trip to Kansas City and back with a 1 month, 2 month old baby. So that's a lot of time on the road. So that's when the thought came to mind of, okay, what do I really want to do after I graduate PT school? Because the first road trip, all I did was listen to my playlist. And after 6 hours, very quickly, I'm like, I can't do this 2 or 3 times a week. So I'm starting to think, okay, what area of PT do I really want to go into? Because, with rotations coming up, you have to shadow or you have to rotate in the hospital, an outpatient setting, and then 2 maybe specialty areas. And so going into that, I'm like, do I want to, give the hospital a good try? Am I just going to be in the outpatient setting? What do I want to do? So I start making a pros and cons list. I start listening to podcasts, start making phone calls with different therapists, different other entrepreneurs, a couple of my mentors of what do I want to do once I graduate? Because, a lot of my classmates were just going to go the outpatient route, and I won't share the names of the different clinics here in Wichita because I don't want to dog them. But there's a lot of cons to what most people go to after graduation. You see your first paycheck, your first adult paycheck, but they make you sign a non-compete. They load you with maybe 15 patients a day. You have to go home and type for 2 hours. And with having a baby, that did not sound enticing. I felt like I wasn't going to be there as much as I wanted to. So I'm like, well, is there a scenario where I can start my own business with the least amount of risk? And so during these road trips to and from Kansas City, I tried to compile some sort of an idea, a plan of what can I do as soon as I pass my boards to create a business where I can be there for my family, but then also practice in a way that I think is best for, the population. So that's when I started getting the idea of starting Elite PT. So the heart of it was I wanted to have a flexible schedule. And so ever since my daughter's been born and since I've started the business, I've always had Monday as my day where I watch my daughter. So every Monday I'd watch my daughter. I would start off with, just a few patients a week while I was also working part-time with another business. Anything I had to do, any schedule I had to do in order to have it revolve around my family, I was going to do it. So kind of cool to have the business start off as more of a convenience for the family. And then just as time went on, it was able to grow. So it started off as a family matter as well as I want to create something that one is an enjoyable experience, but 2, a model that I really think is more patient forward than maybe the different products that we have to offer as PTs today.
That other business you were working for, is that PT related or were you doing something completely different?
So it's probably the biggest, I'll say it, it's Advanced Physical Therapy, who's a fantastic business. I have nothing negative to say about them. The model is your classic insurance model where they take all insurance, Blue Cross, Medicare, United State Insurance, everything. which is there's pros and cons to it. That's why, with that model, you have to load up tons of patients on a therapist schedule just because of the reimbursement rates, which is okay, but that can lead to quick therapist burnout when you're seeing that many patients, only 30-minute appointments, and then you have to take work home. It's a tough model that can expose you prematurely to burnout, and I just altogether didn't want to deal with that. So instead of working your traditional full-time, part-time with them, I did PRN work. So I gave them my availability of, hey, I can work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for 6 hours, which worked well with Elite PT. I had my hours I was going to work there. So it was kind of the best of both worlds. I could work with this big company that helps me get some good repetitions with a higher volume, but I wasn't tied down to 8 to 10 hour days there. It could be in smaller doses of maybe 4 to 6 hours.
Why'd they let you do that?
It was interesting when it came time for graduation.
Because you are kind of in competition. You're not in competition, but you do have your own thing over here.
Yeah, I was surprised. What I thought I was going to have to do is take a PRN job with the hospital because it's a different patient demographic. But when Advanced PT reached out to me and they're like, hey, we'd love to have you work for us, I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I would love to because I'm looking to PRN, but this is what I'm doing. Is that going to be a conflict of interest? And they said, no, actually, if we just go about it in a professional way, you're not trying to steal patients or promote your business, then we should be, solid. And so I'm like, great, that's perfect, because that's actually the setting I would prefer to work in because it's very closely related to what I am currently doing. So we had no issues. I didn't have to sign a non-compete. We were, cordial, professional about the whole thing. So that's one of the many reasons I will praise Advanced PT is they helped me kind of get my business going, and we had no conflicts with it.
Yeah, that's not common.
Right.
Yeah, that's
in
great.
just business itself.
And they make a lot of their, well, not make, but part of the deal is a lot of their full-time and part-time therapists have to sign a non-compete.
Right.
And that was something I was going to try to avoid altogether, knowing I was going to start my business. And I was able to avoid that.
Yeah, heck of a deal.
Yeah, that's great. You brought up risk. How do you handle risk mentally, especially in the early days?
So I tried to eliminate as much risk as possible when starting the business. So I started off subleasing a room within a gym, and the agreement we had was it was kind of a ladder progression where early on I was paying a small amount of rent, just to help me get going. And as we continued within the agreement, the rent kind of scaled up. So pros and cons to that, but I knew I was going to have very, very low overhead early on. And to mitigate the risk, rather than just jumping to the business full time, I was able to do those PRN hours, so I was able to have some sort of income. Because the reality of the situation was my wife was a teacher, and for the 3 years of PT school, we were just solely on that teacher salary, which, you had to live simply on top of having a baby. And so I wanted to have some sort of steady income early on, so it wasn't just, still on my wife. So by taking on the PRN job, I was trying to mitigate the risk by taking on, subleasing a space inside of a gym with relatively low overhead. I was trying to eliminate some of the risk. And then it was a matter of just buying into, myself, like, do I think this is something that I can successfully do? And for the car rides, leading up to me deciding I wanted to do this, I'm like, I think I can do this. If I can see X amount of patients throughout the week, that more than covers what I would get paid, if I took on this full-time job. So I'm like, oh, I can do that. I can see 10 patients a week, no problem. I just have to find different groups or different businesses and approach them and kind of sell my services to them, sell myself to them. And if I can get 1 or 2 patients from these different places a month, I got it. So I tried to prepare the best I could. Now, once you get going, first week there, first month, I saw maybe 1 person. I was like, damn. I thought, being from Wichita, knowing a good amount of people, I was naive. I thought that I would have at least some people reach out to me, tried to market it the best way I could, and it was just crickets for that first month. So I was like, well, I got to do something differently in order to get, business through the door. So I can't just rely on the gym that I'm subleasing from. They maybe, on average, sent me one, if not half a patient a month. So I got to find different groups to approach. So where does everyone go when they're hurt? They go to their doctor. So I started going to different doctors' offices. That didn't really get me much business because I was all cash pay. I was no insurance for the first 2.5 years, all cash pay. And a lot of doctors' offices, they have a bit more of an incentive to keep patients in network. So it's kind of like a cool idea, but it's not as convenient for us. So after approaching doctors' offices, which didn't seem to work, I discovered that there were family practices that had more of a cash pay model, which was similar to what I was offering. You can call it cash pay. You can call it concierge medicine. The offices that I approached early on was Atlas MD. So they have like a monthly subscription model where you pay, let's say, $50 a month. You get longer appointments with your doctor. You get their number. So it's a lot more, one-on-one friendly appointments rather than you have to wait 6 to 8 weeks to get in with your doctor. You're in there for maybe 5 minutes and then you're out the door. It's a lot more patient-centered care. And so once I started finding some of these offices in Wichita, I'm like, well, my guess is they have the same approach to healthcare as me, where insurance sucks. There's a lot of restrictions with it. So let me just start cold calling, emailing, seeing if I can bring coffee to these offices and kind of explain what I'm looking to do. And that first office was Atlas MD with Josh Umber. Him and I were emailing back and forth for a few weeks. I was telling him, or I was explaining to him, this is kind of what I'm looking to do as a new business, offer cash services to patients and not have to deal with the restrictions that insurance will place on you. And he loved that idea. So I'm very grateful. He sent me some really good business, and still to this day, he sent me some really good business. And he introduced me to some other offices here in the Wichita, Andover area that also are sending me business. So started off by, okay, I went to a doctor's office. That didn't work. Let's get more specific. Okay, here's some cash, concierge offices. And then, you'd have some good months and some not so good months. And those not so good months, you're like, okay, can't rely on these groups completely. There's going to be some dips. So that's when I started looking at, okay, where are some other businesses that can get people in my door? The next setting was the gym setting, because a lot of people get hurt in the gym. Unfortunately, one of my, if you want to call them competitors, another PT group, was in damn near every gym in Wichita. They have their banner up everywhere. And I'm like, well, shit, this is kind of like gang territory. I'm not going to come in here and try and take their business from them. So I had to pivot again, and that's when I started looking at yoga studios. When I was in Kansas City, in our preseason and then our off-season, you're doing weights and conditioning 5-6 days a week. And they had free hot yoga every Thursday night on the plaza. So we're like, shit, we're going to do that. That's when I started, my appreciation for yoga started growing, because you feel good. Your mind-body connection grows. And that's a big part of my philosophy with rehab, is being very in tune with the symptoms your body is showing you. And so I'm like, well, this is great. And I've had so many patients, when we're done with the plan of care, say, what should I do now? How can I stay active? And I didn't have a go-to yoga studio who I could just, say that I've been there, I trust them. So that's when I had to start looking around Wichita at different yoga studios to, one, be a good referral source for me to send my patients to, but also if I could get in their doors and kind of, we'll say, sell my services or sell myself there, let's do it. So that's when I started looking at yoga studios and other businesses that I could partner with to offer, what I have to offer to them, but then maybe get more exposure in front of their clients. So it was a lot of, okay, this is working, now it's kind of fizzling. This is working, that's kind of fizzling.
You're a resourceful guy.
I felt like I had to be too, because if things were fizzling and business was quiet, I just got antsy. I'm like, there's no reason for me to just sit here and wait on people to come to me. I need to be a bit more active.
Because even the gym thing is smart. You're really thinking there to go to the gym, and then you're like, all right, someone's here. Let me go downstream even farther. You the yoga studio, like you're doing some thinking.
I had to do some thinking. And the business that's partnered with a bunch of the gyms, the owner there, him and I come from the same coaching tree. We were a part of the same small business coaching group. So the partnership model that both him and I have comes from the same guy. He's based out of North Carolina, where you approach a gym, yoga studio, Pilates studio, say, you know, I'm looking for a good place to send my patients, and so I want to, you know, learn about your business, yada, yada, yada. And what I can offer you guys is your clients will get 10% off of any services if they ever need any PT through me. What I can offer you is my time and my expertise of I can come to your studio, your gym, once a month or once a quarter and do a free workshop, an educational workshop, or I can do a free injury screen for a 2-hour block where your clients can sign up for a 15-minute, like, hey, something's going on with my back, can you take a look at it? Then they can go to the studio or the gym that they're comfortable with, have me check them out. It's no money out of their pocket, and I can at least provide some guidance. If all, you know, that client needs is some advice or a little tweak, great. If they need a longer plan of care, then I can talk to them what that would look like to work with me. So it's a way to get in front of more people, and if it leads to business, great. If it doesn't, you've developed that relationship with that business and that trust, and it could lead to maybe some future business.
Yeah.
You're
doing good.
Yeah. That's a great American story, man. If you want something bad enough, and if you're willing to pivot, when you come across roadblocks, you're willing to pivot, and you want it bad enough, you can really make something happen. That's an amazing story.
And you're willing to fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, how many times how many times did something not go right in that whole story? You know, number of them.
Right.
And you just kept going.
Got power through.
Right.
Yeah,
and
totally.
you're not afraid to talk to people, not afraid to ask for things. Go knock on doors.
I might go as far to say as I almost like that part of the business more than doing PT work itself. I really enjoy reaching out to new locations, whether it's a doctor's office, yoga studio, whatever. And I, you know, whether it's email, phone call, say, I would love to bring coffee by, learn more about your business, and then talk to them about my business. And if it leads to something, the adrenaline rush I get from that is like, oh, this is great. So not to jump too far ahead, but as the business of Elite PT grows, and this is something cool that just happened this morning, I made my first official offer to a pelvic floor PT that she just texted me this morning. She accepted. So I technically just made my first hire, which is a huge step in the business. That's going to come with a lot of work, but I'm very excited because it's going to add a whole nother dimension to what we can offer. So with that being said, as the business grows, I can definitely see me eventually not completely stepping away from treatment, but, you know, growing more into the role of, you know, running a business and all the different components that come with that, because, you know, as of now, that's been very enjoyable.
Gotcha. I was going to ask that. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask how you balance the business side of things, you know, hiring, billing, growth,
Marketing. Yeah.
marketing, with the other side of patient care. You know, that's a lot going on.
It's difficult. If you've been following the Elite PT Instagram or Facebook page, up until about 4 weeks ago, every bit of content was homemade. I'd set up a little ring light and do just like videos of myself talking about whatever, which is fine. But social media and marketing was so far down the totem pole. It was awful. Like, that was like for sure what I spent the least amount of time on was social media presence. The only social media I did was like once or twice a week I'd post a video of me dunking just to stay relevant on my personal page. Just to try
I see those.
Yeah, just to keep eyes on me. I'm like, well, that's my way of like staying relevant. And then maybe by some people watching these videos, they might see, oh, he's got a business page. So it was terrible. So roughly 4 weeks ago, I started working with a videographer, Gage, and he has been awesome. If the content he's been putting out the last 3 or 4 weeks, it is so good. So I have to shout out my guy Gage, because he has been killing it, and it's slowly ramping up the following.
He's just a local guy?
Local guy.
What's his last name?
Harness, I believe. Gage Harness. He has his own business that he started. I think he just completed year 1, and so he's also trying to make a name for himself. He cold called me about a year ago and he said, hey, can I shoot a free video for you or take some pictures? I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. I was not in a good position to just start working with a videographer when he called me, but I kept an eye on the content he was putting out, and he's got some good shit. And so once business really started getting steady this year, and our home life started to calm down with everything that happened this summer, I'm like, I got to reach out to this guy and see if we can create some sort of agreement that works for both parties. And he has been kicking ass with the content he's been putting out there. And he's not slowing down. So to answer your question,
That's fantastic.
how I juggle everything, it's difficult. At the forefront, you have to do a good job with the patients that you're treating. Like if you have this product and it's dog shit, you're not going to get very many people coming back to you. So at first and foremost, I have to do a good job with patient care. I have to do a good job juggling the different partnerships that I have, so stay in good standing with the yoga studios, the gyms that I have made contact with, the doctor's offices. So I try and stay relevant, but also do a good job with the patients that they send me. From a marketing standpoint, I haven't spent a dime on marketing. No Google ads, no Facebook ads. It's all been organic. The only thing I've started paying for is this videographer, but that's like such a good investment because he's doing such a good job. So what I am using for marketing is my time. So going to these different locations. From a billing perspective, I'm doing the billing, I'm doing the scheduling, and I know once this therapist starts working with me, once her schedule starts ramping up, I'm going to have to hire someone to take over, the back end work, because that's going to save me a lot of time that I could then be more productive within the business. So it's a lot of juggling. And like we said earlier, there's going to be some failure within it. There's going to be some bumps in the road that you're going to have to figure out. But up until this point, it's been a juggling act that I think I've done a decent job doing up until this point.
Yeah, I think so too. And the content that I've seen, it all looks great, man.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna Gage is the master behind all of it.
What all are you on?
For social media platforms?
Yeah,
it's mainly Instagram and Facebook. Instagram. Oh, and I guess technically TikTok. We just got going on TikTok too.
So do we.
I was gonna say that's where I've seen a bunch of your
Yeah.
guys' clips. But Instagram's the main one, and it also depends on what patient demographic you're trying to reach out to. I'm just going to spitball numbers out here. When you're looking at TikTok, that's going to be anywhere from middle school to probably around our age. If you're going Facebook, maybe a little bit older crowd, not old, but an older crowd. And Instagram seems to hit kind of both markets pretty well. So I'm the most consistent with Instagram and Facebook, and then TikTok I try and sprinkle in there as well, just to stay relevant. Gage encouraged me to also do YouTube Reels, YouTube Shorts, which I haven't done a good job with that because I don't, that's not something that I see every day, but that's something that we're trying to, slowly work our way into.
We got a couple of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. What I've learned from TikTok, I think that there's older people than you think. Because I thought that too. I'm like, there's people younger than us and then us. Mm-hmm. But with the people that comment on some of our stuff and things you see, I think you'd be surprised. I think people into their 40s and around that age, middle age, are on TikTok.
Well, think about we had a TikTok video go crazy, got 200,000 views, and it was just a little conversation with one of our first guests about a cemetery in Tennessee, and apparently in the southeast, cemeteries are a big deal because there's a lot of wild shit that's gone on in the South.
Yeah.
And that can't be a younger base.
Sure.
That's interested in that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? That's got to be us and older that would be interested in something like that.
That's true, because I put out a couple TikTok videos about me talking about low back pain. And I've had comments from people who are a bit older than us, so that's a good point. There's more individuals who are, let's say, in their 40s, 50s, and sometimes older on TikTok than maybe you'd expect. Probably early on when TikTok was hot, it was all the younger generation, but it's made its way, through each generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the dunks, they're not just two-handed dunks. I see that getting cocked back.
Pull
there.
one up, Blake.
Can you?
I want to see one.
If you go on my Instagram, I have I think it's called a highlight that's just titled Ball. I got all the dunks I've done this year, or most of them that I think are worthy to put in that highlight. I do that just to see how long I can do this for.
Yeah,
I like it.
A lot of these, there we go. A lot of these dunks I couldn't even do in college, but for some reason now.
Oh.
And I worked the slow-mo to make it look better than
That's good, man.
Yeah, man.
I think
Your eyes were at the rim.
the third one was probably my best one. This one's solid. The third one's the one I'm most proud of. This one. So I jump over someone.
Damn.
Dude, that's nice.
That took a lot of attempts, and then when I finally got one, I said, okay, I'm never trying that again, because I don't think I'm going to be able to get it more than once.
Wow.
So yeah, that's been 2025 is me.
How old are you?
28.
Yeah, you're doing good, man.
Yeah, seeing how long I can do that for, and again, that's I would post those occasionally. I'm like, God, I look like such a arrogant guy. Like, look at me, I can do these cool dunks. I'm like, well, that's maybe a way to keep eyes on me that can maybe eventually help the business in some way or another.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how long you can do that. I'm running the Prairie Fire for the second time this year. That's something I was thinking that same thing. I'm just going to keep doing it until I can.
Right.
Try to at least.
To get into basketball a little bit, if you ever watched the Wichita State men's basketball team, this would have been probably when I was 10, 11, 12.
We probably were.
Yeah. Jamar Howard, does that
Yeah.
ring a bell?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
He was
I see him at the YMCA sometimes.
I played against him a few years ago in a cash tournament, and I'll let me put a pin in that story. When growing up, you had your Jamar Howard, your Sean O'Geary, Kyle Wilson,
Paul Miller.
yes,
PJ Kuznar.
PJ,
Yep.
yeah. Jamar Howard was always my favorite player because he was a dunker, and then growing up, LeBron was my favorite player because he's just an athletic freak. So dunking was always something that I wanted to be able to do. Got my first one as a freshman in high school. I thought that was so damn cool. And then in college, my role was I was our primary defender, so I had to guard the best player, whether it was a point guard or a post player. And then I was more of the guy who'd catch lobs, rim runner, whatever. So dunking was always something that really drew me into basketball more than shooting. Now, unfortunately, the game has shifted way more towards three-point shooting than just pure athleticism like it was in the 2000s. But that's aside from the point. So dunking's always something that has been a huge part of basketball for me. And even when I'm playing old man noon ball Wednesdays and Fridays, it still feels super cool to be able to go up and dunk it. So I'm going to try to do this for however long I can, because I know once you lose it, it's very hard to get it back. So the dunks, the trick dunks, if you will, that I've been doing, that's just been a recent thing that I've been able to do these dunks, because it's just a lot of muscle memory and repetition. Whereas in college, the only cool dunk I could do was windmill. I would do contact dunks, but outside of windmilling, that was the coolest thing. I couldn't jump over anyone. I couldn't catch it off the side of the backboard. I couldn't do this and that. So that's just been a recent endeavor I've tried to take on and see what I can do.
Jamar Howard was playing in that league we were in at the Wichita Sports Forum. Remember that a couple
I was going to
years
say,
back?
I feel like I've seen him in that, or I just play at the Y on Sundays, like at the Y League.
Yeah.
Just, some BS deal. And I feel like I've seen him there, but it might have been the sports forum that you're talking about.
He was, we did a basketball league, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago now. And Jamar Howard was in the league. There was only one league, and we were wanting to play rec basketball. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why we didn't go to the YMCA, but we went to the sports forum for some reason.
Comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was only one league, so the A League, we were in the A League. It was me, Troy, a couple of my cousins, a couple of our buddies. Like, all right, let's see what the A League's about. We had some good players, and then people like me who were not good at basketball.
Yeah.
And first game, we step on the floor against Bethel College, like a lot of their players.
Oh, gosh.
They beat us by like 65.
Yeah.
Jeez. That's rough. Well, Jamar's team, do you know?
Like the Wichita Wizards, isn't that like a semi-pro team?
Yeah.
They were in that league too. Thank God that they eventually formed a B league. So we played one game there and then dropped down.
And then you bumped down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
I played a couple
it was a bad
men's
team.
leagues with Trifecta, I think is the team that some guys get together and play on in Javier puts the teams together. Jamar played in the tournament with Trifecta, with the cash tournament they had here in town. And it was so wild. Jamar, he's not an old guy, but I watched him when he was in college when I was like 10 years old.
Right.
And then to be able to play against him in a tournament, I'm like, this is kind of cool. This was the guy. I had his jersey. So in the game, there was a lot of competitive, pushing, shoving, shit talking and all that stuff. Then after the game, I was like, hey, dog, I just want to let you know that I was like your biggest fan growing up. So we got a picture together, and it was all love after that. It was a really cool moment to be with one of the guys you really looked up to.
Yeah.
For sure, man. Mark Turgeon had some fun teams.
He had some good teams. He did. And then, Marshall took it to another level, and then it fizzled out for, the reasons it did. But I'm just waiting for them to get some more juice again, because it was really fun when WSU had those really big-time teams with Ron Baker, Fred. That was a fun time to watch Wichita State. They just haven't figured it out yet.
No,
but I think the fan support will be back after this TBT run. Did you follow the TBT?
Yes.
So I went to the semifinal and the championship. In the championship game, there was probably 10,000 people there. That was the biggest crowd since COVID.
And the Aftershocks played such a good game too.
Yeah, dude, they were
popped
such a
off.
good team.
Was it Marcus Keene?
Yeah.
He's a dog.
He is a dog.
He's a dog.
Dude, I looked up his stats. So he went to Western Michigan, I assume before the portal. Mm-hmm. He averaged 30 a game.
I think he was the leading scorer in the nation that year. Yeah, he's just a hooper.
Imagine averaging 30 a game in college where the shot clock's longer, less possessions, only a 40-minute game. You're averaging 30 points in college. You're scoring all the time.
You have to have the green light. You have to have the confidence, and you have to get the shots up. To me, in high school, I was our leading scorer, and it was like maybe 17 a game. I was dead. I thought I was getting a ton of shots up. 30 a game, you have to be getting at least like close to 20 shots up a game, and you have to have all the confidence in the world, because he's going to have games where he's just not hitting, but he's got to come out with the attitude of, I'm the best dude on this court, no one can guard me. And you can see that in the TBT. He's like, no one can fucking guard me, I'm just going to pull this.
Right. For sure. Yeah, they had a great run. And it'll be interesting because I saw there's a family that sits right behind us. The man, his name's Shane. He runs an investment firm out east, and he donated 50 season tickets to the Big Brothers Big Sisters. So for this entire next season.
That's sick.
And then somebody else I saw the other day saw what they did and did the same thing. So I think the juice is kind of coming back to Wichita.
I hope so.
Now they need to put a winner on the floor.
They do. I agree. With the transfer portal and NIL, it's probably harder for Wichita State to get some top transfers, but I've seen some. I don't know if it's for this upcoming year, but I think they've been making some noise with some of the guys they've been bringing in for next year. So
yeah,
I think it's really just, you got to get some momentum. You got to get some late postseason runs to get guys to want to come to Wichita.
I mean, even just being in bubble contention.
Yeah.
Like, we're not even talking about making the tournament. Just show a heartbeat.
Yeah,
show
right.
a pulse of anything, and you'll get the city back.
You got to get your team on the map. You have to get people aware of where is Wichita, who is Wichita State, and if you can just stay relevant, then people might, take a look at you. So
Right.
we have to offer.
we had Taylor Eldridge in here right before the TBT.
Nice.
And he was telling us WSU has a transfer guard from one of the small Carolina schools, and he said he's got a very similar game to this guy. You'll see him during the TBT. His name's Marcus Keene. So now after seeing that, this kid's got some big shoes to fill.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, well, that's cool. I hope they have a good year.
We'll see.
We all do.
Yeah, everyone does.
I just feel so beaten down. Like,
know.
it's like, I'm not going to believe it till I see it.
Because we've been cold for how many years? How many years have they been down?
2019.
They
2020?
made the tournament in the COVID year. The only reason they made the tournament because a lot of their games against good opponents were canceled. So they would not have made the tournament that year. They were in the first four, lost to Drake. Ever
That's
since
right.
that, they've never been close to the tournament.
Got it.
And they weren't even that good that year. They weren't an NCAA tournament team. They just happened to have the record because scheduling.
So they've been cold for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. Jeez. Well,
At least.
maybe this is the year.
For sure. I want to ask you about some rehab.
Yeah.
You work with many athletes. Is there a common rehab mistake that you see that slows progress?
Yes. So one of my philosophies with rehab is put a athlete, whether that's a high school, college, professional, or just your weekend warrior athlete, put them in a position where they're doing movements that are more in line with what they're trying to get back to. So for example, if I just got done working with a professional soccer player. If I have her come in and she's got, let's say, low back pain, I'm not just going to have her do the same shit of clamshells, glute bridges, these like cookie cutter exercises that every PT clinic makes you do. I'm not going to have her do that and then expect her body to be okay right when she goes back to the soccer field, right? I want her to be able to do movements that, directly translate to what she's going to be doing when she's back to, full competition. So what I'll unfortunately see, whether that's in the training room, whether that's at a PT, a chiro, wherever you go, the rehab is very cookie cutter, and which can get you better where you're existing pain-free maybe, but maybe not performing pain-free. So my philosophy, this might be my number one philosophy with rehab, is I did a video talking about exposure therapy. If you have someone who has a fear of heights and they're trying to overcome this fear of heights, you can't just one day wake up and say, okay, I'm not going to be scared to, be on a mountain. You have to introduce the trigger in small doses to desensitize the nervous system to this fear. So that might be you go on the hill at Sedgwick County Park, or go on something that's higher than what you're used to, and you have to just do it in small doses. You can't force your body to just accept it. So when you take that concept of exposure therapy and you compare it to physical therapy, if you will. If I have pain in my back with bending over to pick up an object off the floor, well, I'm going to try and get you to pick up something off the floor, but scale it way back. So that might be I have to just start introducing the mechanics, the movements of bending forward very incrementally and see what their body will accept. So that could be I have them do a small little hip hinge, like if you're doing an RDL. Can the back tolerate doing a hip hinge with just body weight? If it can, okay, then we have to slowly progress, because if we just rely on that, then when they actually have to bend over to pick something up off the floor, it's going to hurt. You have to work your way up to the movement itself. Then once you're able to do the movement, you also have to progress in order for that movement to not, your body revert back to that being a trigger. So with rehab and comparing it to exposure therapy, it's small doses of what would be the trigger for that injury. And it's a lot of reading and reacting to the body. This is, kind of tying into yoga, the mind-body connection. You have to really listen to what your body is telling you. My rule of thumb with exercise when you have discomfort is if the exercise or the movement you are doing is causing a 0, a 1, a 2, or a 3 out of 10 pain, so very mild pain, you're still safe to do the movement. That's going to be the body just maybe being a little bit on edge, maybe a little bit maybe questioning why are you doing this movement, but you're not causing any more damage. Once you hit a 4 or more, maybe moderate pain, that's probably too much on the body with that movement. So a lot of people may be a bit nervous, a bit scared to do a certain movement if it causes some pain, but I'm very specific with my questions of, well, how much pain? If it's like a 1 or a 2, it's okay to do. And a lot of times, if it's your first time doing this movement, like let's say a hip hinge, which can be, it's a very technical movement, especially if you've had a history of back issues. If they're able to do a hip hinge the first round and it maybe causes a 2 or 3 out of 10 pain, it's very common for the second and third round for the pain to go away, because the body has figured out like, oh, this isn't causing any damage, any pain. We're going to let our guard down. And then you think with repetition, all of a sudden this movement is going to slowly, no longer become a trigger for it. So that's, to answer your question, what I see often as a mistake with rehab is not doing movements that correlate with what you're trying to return to, and not introducing the potential trigger in small doses, which can add weeks, if not months, into your rehab plan.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. We've seen an uptick as well in Achilles injuries.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers blew his. Kevin Durant blew his. Halliburton, Lillard, Jason Tatum, all in recent memory.
Yeah.
Do you have any theories on why that is? It seems like over the last couple of years, Achilles is now the injury.
Yeah. I think there's a few reasons why we're seeing an uptick. And I'll stick with the NBA because that's what's been recent, and that's
Kobe.
Kobe. And then in the playoffs, you saw a lot of big names, like you said, Lillard, Tatum, Halliburton, and it came at the worst time in their season. I have a theory that, they added that mid-season cup, whatever they call it in the NBA, to incentivize players to, play harder during the regular season. Because for the NBA, the regular season is it's not competitive. No one's playing defense. And so by them adding that in there, it makes players play harder and star players play harder. So what I think is going on with those star players is just the amount of volume that they're putting on their lower body. The game's getting faster, more athletic every single year. I think, and we know, I'm going to put a pin in that. Notice all three of those guys had a calf strain, some sort of calf issue right before that happened. I want to come back to that because
KD did as well, I think.
Yes, that's no coincidence. Those two things are directly tied to each other. So you can expect next year, if any guy has a calf strain, they're going to take it a bit more seriously. But what's happening is you're putting more volume on the legs. I don't want to say they're not training the right way, because they're working with some of the best, trainers, PTs, whatever, in the whole world. But I do want to talk about what type of training I think they're going to start doing now to maybe prevent some of these Achilles injuries. But just the volume of, all the minutes that they're putting on their lower body, as well as just some bad luck. Do you want to pull up the video of the Halliburton Achilles injury? Because I want to talk about this specific movement, because this is what you saw with, for sure, Lillard and for sure Tatum, and Halliburton as well. There's a certain movement or position that the foot gets placed in that puts you at a high disadvantage, a lot more risk to blow your Achilles out, especially if you have a calf-related injury. So I do want to talk about positioning, and sometimes it's just shit out of luck. Unfortunately, injuries happen.
Do you know, statistically speaking, have Achilles injuries gone up?
Way up. I think the stat that I saw was this past year, it was well over 8. And in the previous, 50 years, it was like 16 total. So think about that. So in like 50 years, and I may be misspeaking, in 50 years, it was like somewhere between 16 to 20. And then this last season, you had 8. So there's just this huge uptick. And so that's, that's the question. How do you prevent these from happening?
Let's take a look at this nasty blowout.
So his heel's elevated.
Is it his
left? So it's the right.
Gee.
Spin that back one more time.
Those are brutal to watch.
So his right heel is elevated. When he tries to push off, his heel's going to the ground, and it's too much on the calf, which is supposed to bring the heel up. And then it's just too much, and then, there he goes. He drops.
Okay, say that again.
Okay.
That part, what you were thinking there. Because both heels are up, kind of.
Right. So the right heel, he's trying to push off that right foot.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. When he's trying to push off that right foot, he's trying to engage his calf muscle.
Right.
Which that muscle is responsible for your toes pointing or your heel coming up. As he's trying to push off, that's a lot of load on the calf as it's lengthening. Because that was too much load on the calf as it was lengthening, it was strained, so it wasn't able to fire as efficiently. That all goes down to the Achilles, where it attaches to the foot, and as it's lengthening, he was generating more force than it was able to handle, and so that's when it just went. It was too much on the tendon.
Wow.
So to get kind of technical, he experienced a tear in the Achilles when he was trying to fire the muscle in a lengthened position. So if you've heard of the terms like concentric and eccentric training, concentric is when a muscle is shortening. So if I'm doing a bicep curl, that's concentric because the muscle is shortening. An eccentric movement is if I'm holding the dumbbell and I'm trying to prevent it from lowering, my bicep's still active, but it's getting lengthened. You see a lot of Achilles tears, the one with Tatum, the one with Lillard, and the one with Halliburton. The muscle was engaging as it was lengthening, and it was just too much stress on the muscle at that time. And that's when the tendon just goes because it can't handle it. So what I was going to talk about is the training that they will most likely put more of an emphasis on is eccentric loading or eccentric training of the muscle, or making that muscle work in the lengthened portion of the movement and, as well as the shortened. But the injuries often happen when you're going through the lengthened phase. Does that make sense?
So that is that would be like tearing your
great
bicep going down like that.
Yes,
like
exactly.
Just your Achilles instead of your bicep.
As it's trying to lengthen, it can't tolerate the load as it's lengthening. Or if let's say it was very heavy, it's going down, 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 and you're trying to very quickly bring it back up, but you can't squeeze it. It's that moment of when you're trying to shorten your bicep, and if you translate over to that Achilles, that's when it can't handle that, and it just goes.
Damn.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Damn. That's great insight.
That is.
Yeah, and so I would assume they're doing some sort of eccentric loading. So any sort of movement on the calf where you're loading it. So you might do like some single leg hops or some single leg lowing, some depth jumps, some bounds, or some sort of let's say you're doing like your calf raises where your heels are going up and down. Well, maybe you're going past neutral to where the calf is more in a lengthened position, but you're thinking about the control, the slow on the way down and quick on the way up, because that is, if you're breaking it down, the muscle is slowly lengthening as he's trying to push off. And when he tries to push off and the muscle shortened, it wasn't able to because there was prior damage to that structure.
Gotcha. It's interesting. It seems like over the last few years, Achilles surgery has gotten way better.
Yeah.
The medicine behind it. So I know Kobe was kind of at the end of his career, but that ended his career when he tore his.
Yeah.
And and Rodgers too. I think he was over the hill before he tore his.
Yeah.
But DeMarcus Cousins is a unique example because he was going to the All-Star game every year, tore his Achilles, and that ended his career.
Yeah.
But now you got guys like KD, tore his. He came back the same player. Mm-hmm. Do you think a lot of these guys, now maybe not Lillard because he's older, that might be a variable. There might be other variables.
But Tatum,
play.
I would be very surprised if Tatum doesn't come back looking great.
Halliburton, Tatum come back the same player?
I think they can, and age is, definitely helping them out with them being younger.
Sure.
Why Achilles is typically and historically been what ends people's careers is it is a bitch to heal. It's positionally in a spot where you don't get as much good blood flow to it, and so it just takes a long time to get all the healing to cycle through that structure, as well as the calf is such a twitchy muscle, and with basketball, you're using your calves all the time. Let's say Halliburton was a golfer. He'd be able to bounce back because while you are going to use your calves to a certain degree, basketball, his foot is going to return to that position from the first game he returns. That's just a very natural basketball movement. So it's exposed to those movements all the time, which, when you're rehabbing, you have to perform those movements before you can go and return to play. So it positionally, anything with like the lower leg, the ankle, and the foot takes a lot longer to heal just because of, anatomically where it's located on our body and, what the blood flow and all that, all that. But, medicine is improving, rehab is improving, so that's, one big reason why you're seeing guys like KD be able to return to sport. You have to have a good surgeon, you have to have a good rehab plan, you have to be motivated with your rehab, you can't half-ass it or you won't come back, and then you have to be able to, do more game-like activities, and then you have to develop a trust with it, because if you don't trust the foot, you won't be the same player.
That's a good point. Speaking of surgery is obviously very important, but in certain situations, do you think it can be overprescribed?
Yes. That was actually one of the last videos I posted, talking about surgery, not bashing on surgery, because a surgeon's job is to try and fix people. They're looking at it through their scope of this person has this problem, how can I fix it, right? I have seen a lot of cases where people may have prematurely jumped to surgery. I had a teammate from high school, AAU. Before the age of 26, he had 3 back surgeries, altogether. The surgeries that he had, he could have avoided them, but he was just dealt a bad hand. He had a bad back. He probably could have done some conservative treatment, and we did a little bit after the back surgeries, and he did improve. But there are some surgeries that are a bit more difficult to avoid, but there are some that you can avoid, and I'd say a common injury that I've seen this year, I've seen a lot of shoulders, a lot of rotator cuffs. And a lot of times when people hear the term rotator cuff, they go, oh crap, that's like instant surgery. You hear of rotator cuff surgery, which is not a fun rehab.
Is that from baseball?
Can be from baseball. It can be, I think the demographic that's most at risk for a rotator cuff tear is men in their 40s. It's when we think we still got it and we're still lifting heavy.
I was going to ask, can it be from like bench press?
You can get a rotator cuff injury with bench press. I'll see a shoulder impingement, which is involved with a rotator cuff from bench press, and then it makes bench press very difficult.
Is that like right here?
Yeah, usually. So it depends on what muscle. There's 4 rotator cuff muscles. The one that typically people feel through the front here, like this pinching pain, if it's rotator cuff, it's most likely the supraspinatus. That muscle's involved with like forward flexion during this, initial movement. And so with a bench press, you're putting your shoulders in a position where that supraspinatus muscle gets crowded or pinched, hence the word impingement. Now, another structure that can kind of cause some discomfort through here is where the bicep attaches. Some people can get a tendonitis or a tendinosis or a strain or, all the different inflammatory conditions that can crowd that spot. And that can hurt during a bench press movement too.
So a couple years back, probably about 2 years now, I was incline bench pressing, and I got a really bad pinch here that put me on the shelf for probably a couple months.
Dumbbell?
Barbell.
So I quit barbell benching. Do you have an opinion on dumbbell versus barbell when it comes to injury?
I've heard both sides. I typically, when I'm doing flat bench, I typically do dumbbell, and it's because I know my right side's stronger than my left side, and I want to make sure that it's even distribution and my right side's just not taking over. When I'm doing incline bench, usually I do it on a Smith machine because I like to go a bit heavier, and then if I go to failure, I can just rack it. But I know that even when I'm getting towards the end of my set and I'm really, mechanics are starting to get bad, I know my right side's taking over a bit more than my left. So some people are very set on dumbbell bench is way healthier on the shoulders. A lot of that just has to do with the positioning of the arms. If your elbows are coming up a bit higher, it can be a bit more taxing on the shoulders, just anatomically versus here. And when you have dumbbells, you can kind of control that shoulder position. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing your flat bench with a barbell, as long as you're not being stupid,
That was the last time I barbell benched, actually.
I haven't barbell benched in forever because I've always thought that way. And even kind of in personal experience, I just felt like dumbbell was, I don't know, just felt a little better. But
yeah, and
teach their own.
I really just do dumbbell bench when I'm doing flat because I feel like I have more control of the movement both sides versus the other. So you can do both, and everyone's going to have their preferences on what feels better. And sometimes doing the barbell bench, that's more of a ego thing, not in the bad sense, but it can feel good when you're lifting heavy with a barbell compared to just the dumbbells.
Right.
Depends on what your goals are.
Right.
The common injuries you see, what'd you say, rotator cuff?
Saw a lot of shoulders this year.
Are there any tips and tricks to avoid that for, common guy like Troy and I?
To avoid,
That stay active, lift weights, run.
I'd say what I see often is when people are wanting to kind of get back into working out and whatnot, be smart with how quickly you return to it, and what I mean by that is how quickly you ramp up the weight. While I very much promote and encourage people to go lift weights both lower and upper body, if you go, let me use the example of running. If you go from not being a runner whatsoever and then you're trying to sign up for 5Ks like that, you're probably going to get hurt just because your body is not used to those movements. Same can be said with lifting weights. You have to ease the body back into it, not just so you're not as sore, but so, especially with like the shoulders, which are more at risk for certain injuries like the rotator cuff, the impingement, the bicep stuff, the bursitis. You have to ease into it or the nerves are not going to like what you're doing, and then they're going to hunker down with pain, and then you're going to be out 2 weeks, 4 weeks, months, whatever, and then you may not ever want to go back. So you have to be smart with your progressions and the movements, and you have to be really good at listening to your body. What I see oftentimes with rotator cuff injuries, if it's like a tear, let's jump right to a tear, is if you are doing any sort of lifting, like if you're at work and you do a lot of hands-on work where you're lifting something off a shelf, if you are at shoulder level or above and you take on a heavy load, your rotator cuff muscles are at a huge disadvantage because they don't have as much help from the other muscles. And so a lot of tears will happen if you're trying to lift something heavy or there's a quick jerk where maybe a lot of the load falls onto the rotator cuff, and then it's too much, and then you get a tear. So to answer your question, to be careful when you're lifting heavy weights at shoulder level and above, and if you're someone who is trying to work out and train, be smart with your progressions, especially early on if you are newer to lifting weights.
Do you stretch before and after your workouts?
I do a warm-up before, and I will typically do some form of stretching afterwards. If you are going to do, let's say, leg day, I don't encourage people to do your static stretching. It is much, much better on the muscles and the joints to do more of an active warm-up. So if I'm going to lift legs, part of my warm-up is doing like the movement, like squats, like body weight squats. Or I'll do the leg swings. I'll do all the different warm-ups we did in track where you're going up and down the high knees, the butt kicks, those active movements, because what the warm-up truly is engaging the muscles to get blood, which is going to make them more warmed up, and more blood to the muscles will reduce the likelihood of an injury. So I had we'll say an injury a few months ago. It was a heavy shoulder day for me. I'd done my warm-up, shoulders felt good, and I was doing an overhead press. And when I was controlling the weights on the way down and I was letting go of this position, I strained one of these muscles in my forearm to the point to where I knew my workout's probably done because it just feels like someone stabbed me right through there. I didn't do a good enough warm-up. I did a good warm-up for my shoulders. Now, typically, I don't warm up my forearms, but there was too much load at that moment on these guys that it wasn't, expecting. Whereas in the weeks prior, I'd done that weight before, and it was just fine. Just for some reason, at that particular day and time, this muscle wasn't ready for the movement. It probably wasn't warmed up, and I went a bit too heavy from the jump, and then I dealt with a strain. So warm up before activity, that goes with lifting, that goes with running, that goes with almost anything. I would do that before activity. Static stretching afterwards is a good option. Oftentimes I'll do a cool down where I'm still doing almost like an active warm-up but at a lower intensity just to keep good blood going to those muscles so I don't just tighten up right away.
What is your warm-up for an upper body? Like chest, because we joke about it, we're noobs when it comes to stretching, but what do you do for an upper body? Because I do the static stretching. I'm not going to do it anymore. Sure. I'm going to do that other stuff for lower body.
Yeah.
But what do you do for upper body? You just lift light?
Yeah. So if I'm doing any upper body, so if it's chest, tri, shoulder, back, bi, any of that, a lot of times I start with my shoulder with something light. I'll do body weight. I'll do kind of like arm circles. I'll do side raise, forward raise with body weight. Then I'll go 5 pounds. Sometimes I'll jump to like 15, 20 pounds where it's not too taxing on the shoulders. And then if I'm going to something like flat dumbbell bench press, I won't go to my working weight. I'll go to a lighter weight to get the chest ready for that movement. So it can be whatever movement you're wanting to work that day. Treat your first set as the warm-up with a much lighter weight just to get it active and prepared, and then you can start the loading process.
That's great. I doubt a lot.
That is great advice.
I could be wrong. I doubt a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
And that's probably incredibly beneficial. Like, I'll start doing that now.
Yeah. Because the name of the game is getting blood to whatever structure you're trying to work. When a muscle is in a more blood-enriched environment, it's happier, and it's more loose, it's more relaxed, it's more... it's able to respond to the message that, nervous system sends the muscle that's trying to send back. It's more responsive when it's in a more blood-enriched environment. What blood carries in it is oxygen, and what do nerves thrive the most in is a more oxygenated state. A lot of times with injuries, when you have let's say a radiating pain, like a nervy pain, oftentimes it's because that nerve is a bit deprived of oxygen compared to what its normal is. And so if you're able to get blood to that area, maybe via muscle engagement, muscle activation, that's why a lot of times exercise can be better than stretching when you have something like sciatic pain. Because stretching, while it can get some blood to the structures, muscle engagement or doing an exercise is infinitely better. So it's amazing if you start introducing exercise, even in the presence of pain, you can get improvement because you're getting more oxygen to the nerves. And then it's in a better environment for it to not give you those zingers down the leg.
Do you think that this stuff so well that you could, like, if you got hurt, you could self-diagnose the majority? Or do you think, like, how well do you know it where if you got hurt, you'd be that sure on what it is?
Well, it's one thing to be sure on what it is, and it's another to follow my own advice that I give other people. Like, I'm my worst patient. I've had so many ankle sprains where I just don't do anything about it just because I'm like, I'll just power through it. Like, sure. I'm my own worst patient. So by no means, I don't know everything. I remember in PT school, every day I'd walk into class, I'm like, damn, these people are so much smarter than me. Like, there was some self-sabotage of, like, I know I can do a better job than a lot of my classmates with, like, patient communication and just, like, sitting in an appointment, listening to people, and then developing whatever diagnoses I think it is. But, God, there was a lot of smart people in my class, and they'd finish tests so quick, and I'm only halfway done. I'm like, golly. So I say all that I know I'm not the most book smart therapist. There's a lot of therapists who are just so damn smart. When it comes to my body, I feel like I know my body better than anyone else, and a lot of that is trying to be very in tune with what I'm feeling. So if I have an injury, I'd say most of the time I feel like I would have a good idea of what's going on, especially if it's not one where I just woke up one morning and I was hurting and it's like, okay, what's going on? If it's like I did an activity and then I felt pain after, I would say I can give a pretty good guess of what I think's going on, which is a beneficial tool.
Hugely beneficial.
When you got friends and family who have an injury and they can text me or call me and describe what's going on, I can at least give them a few different, working thoughts of what I think it could be. And what I found is a lot of maybe these like 2 or 3 diagnoses that I think it could be. A lot of the rehab is very similar, so it's like you're going to treat it relatively the same way. You don't have to be 100% certain. And that brings up another point of the topic of an MRI, which is something that's very it can be very expensive for some people. I'm not anti-imaging, but a lot of people will go out and spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on this MRI for it to just tell them what the problem is, but not to fix the problem. And so I've had some people who've been considering an MRI, and I check them out and I can give them a pretty good guess of what I think's going on. And even if it's maybe not 100% exactly it, but it's within the ballpark, the rehab can significantly help them. And then we just kind of save them thousands of dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn. Have you noticed any patterns in people who recover faster versus slower if the injuries are similar?
If you have someone who prior to the injury was very active, let's use the example of someone who got a knee or hip replacement. If you have someone who was sedentary, who did not work out a day in their life, it's going to take them a lot longer to bounce back from that surgery than someone who was very active. So your prior activity level is huge. Another big one, this is something that I talk about with my patients that's maybe not common practice, is the other factors like how's your sleep, how are your stress levels, how's your diet. Those go such a long way, especially something like stress level. And why I talk about that, by no means am I your classic therapist of like, let's talk about your stress. What's going on at work?
Sounds like it.
But I hear all sorts of stories, and some days I feel like it. But with something like your stress, there's a chemical that's released in the body called cortisol, right? We have cortisol levels. It's the stress hormone, if you will. When you have higher levels of cortisol, you have more inflammation in the body, which leads to decreased healing times. So if you have someone who's stressed at work or someone who's stressed at home or just more of an antsy individual, oftentimes they take a bit longer to heal because those cortisol levels are so dang high. So I've talked with a lot of individuals of like, okay, are there certain stressors going on that we can fix? Like what are the different areas of your life that we can address and maybe like start fixing right now? If it's, I'm up till 2 a.m. and then I have to wake up at 8 a.m. If you're not getting very much sleep, you're not going to heal as quickly because you're going to have more cortisol in your body. And we heal like a lot of the times, a lot of our healing comes from when we're asleep. And if you're just depriving your body from that time, that window of healing, if you're not getting that. So stress levels, your diet, there's a direct correlation between your inflammatory levels with, you can have more inflammatory foods that raise your inflammatory levels systemically. That can prolong healing. If you're someone who's not fueling your body, so this is where it becomes very applicable with athletes, if you're not fueling your body the proper way, it can take an injury a bit longer to heal. So those other factors I put a huge emphasis on, because that can save people tons of time if they're addressing these things that they can address and that they can't control.
That's interesting how many factors go into it.
Yeah, there's a lot. And that's why some days I do feel like a therapist, because I'm not like a therapist, because I'm not just talking about...
You're trying to get to the root cause.
And sometimes the root cause is not what we think. It could be like there's a lady who I just got done working with who she sleeps like an hour a night. I'm like, well, no kidding. Like there's a reason that we're not healing. And some of it she can control and some of it she can't. But I'm like, if we can get to 4 hours, like let's start. Can we get to 4 hours? What do we have to do? Are there certain routines?
You ever heard of melatonin, lady?
Man, something. Like, is there something we can do? Can we reduce the screen time before we go to bed? Is there a certain routine? Can we do a heating pad and stretching before we go to bed to put the body in the best environment that it can be in?
Yep. Screen time's a huge factor.
Totally.
When it comes to getting to sleep on time.
Yeah, I'm bad at it.
Oh, I'm terrible as
Man.
well.
Most are.
Yeah, I'm bad at it. I'll doom scroll for, right before I go to bed, which I know is not great. But when you have a 2-month-old kid, it takes all of 30 seconds to fall asleep. So right now, that's not bothering me. But once we get more on a routine sleep schedule, it's going to be more important for me to not be on my phone for an hour right before I go to sleep.
Sure. Yeah, if you're out there, don't doom scroll unless it's our videos. I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for people about our age who aren't competing but are still trying to stay in shape? What are the best ways we can avoid those nicks, injuries?
Well, let me say, if you do encounter, an injury, an ache, a pain, don't let that derail you from going back to that activity. A lot of people will, like most people, their New Year goal is to go to the gym, and they have an injury or they get sore and then they stop going. If you stay consistent, even the days where you have some sort of discomfort, that's going to go, miles for your body. So someone who's let's say our age, in the 20s, 30s, whatever, and they're wanting to, stay active, stay healthy, here's a big one. Find an activity that is enjoyable to you. And so for some people, that's going to be Pilates. For some people, that's going to be golf. For some people, that's going to be basketball, weightlifting, whatever it may be. There are so many things out there that we can do that is good for our body that maybe we haven't tried yet. Golf is something I picked up. Now, I'm not a good golfer by any means, but I enjoy it. And it's a way to get outside, walk who am I kidding? I ride. I don't walk 18 holes. But get out, walk, and it's good exercise, and it's really good mental exercise for me.
Walking 18 holes is an incredible exercise.
Especially you're carrying your bag.
Yeah. I did it this beginning of the summer, probably. Unbelievable exercise.
You think about how many steps you're getting in those 18
Holding
holes.
A bag?
Yeah. Right. Good luck. So finding a form of exercise that doesn't feel like exercise. So for me, it's basketball. I had to take a few months off of basketball when I graduated college, so it didn't feel like a job. And then once I returned to it, that's my cardio. Like, the only cardio I do is Wednesday, Friday, noon ball, because it doesn't feel like exercise. It just feels like a fun hobby that just so happens to be a form of exercise. So finding something that brings you joy will also help with the consistency.
Awesome. Well, you got anything too far?
I don't think so. I think we'd hit it.
What do you got for us? Anything?
What do I got for you guys?
I feel like your first story of kind of feeling it out is similar to kind of how we've been, just starting this whole thing up.
Yeah.
Just trial and error and something that we've never done. And
asking people.
Yeah.
Just asking people.
Just putting yourself out there. And it's like, all right, if someone, if someone says no, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care.
The worst thing that can happen to you is somebody saying no.
And I say
that's not that bad of a
so
thing.
Often. Because early on, when you have a lot of people telling you no or saying like, oh yeah, I'd love to hear about it, and then you never hear from them again, it can be pretty discouraging. And especially when you think you have this great product, you have this great service that you can offer people, and then just no one's interested in it, you're like, well, am I doing something wrong?
Yeah.
So a lesson I learned in PT school in particular was the way that I learned best is really putting myself out there. I was the student who I hated raising my hand. I hated answering in front of the class. I just didn't. I had truly the fear of failure, of getting an answer wrong in front of my peers. I'm like, Connor, stop being a little bitch. Like, just, you will.
That's common though.
It is. And you will. And the way that I learned the best was I had to put myself in an environment where I knew I was probably going to make mistakes. But that's how I learned, because then I knew if I made a mistake in front of other people, I would not let that happen again. So then it gave me more of an incentive to learn from my mistakes. The same has happened with business, is trial and error, getting myself out there in front of doctors and whomever. And if they say no, or if they say yes and then nothing happens with it, it's a lesson learned. What's the saying? If there's you're either right or you learn your lesson. You either win or you learn your lesson. There's never truly a loss in this process if you go into it with the right perspective. So I treat every, you could say, negative encounter I've had in business as a lesson. And then, not to sound too tacky, but you learn from those lessons, and then that's how you're going to grow.
You absolutely
Totally.
do. You absolutely do. And I always remind myself kind of with this, it's like, nobody's getting out of here anyways.
Yeah.
We're all going to die someday.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's been in my head.
Breathe, relax.
Who was it that I heard the other day say, at the end of the day, we're all just gonna die, right?
Right.
This is a pet peeve of mine, is when I see so many people just wasting the one life that we were given with let's say maybe unhealthy habits. And that doesn't mean you can't just turn it around. But I'm like, golly, we're going to die someday. And if this is what we did with our life, that would be so disappointing if that's all we did. Like I'm trying to have the most fun, first and foremost with my family. I'm trying to be a good dad, a good husband, and create the best life for my family. If I wasn't doing elite PT, I probably wouldn't be a physical therapist. Like, because I've seen how much fun this setting is, this business is, and if I wasn't doing this, I know I wouldn't have as much fun. So at the end of the day, we all are on, we have this clock that's ticking that's going to run out someday. So it's like, shit, while we're here, let's like do something with it. Let's be productive. Let's make a difference. And when you run into instances where you're not sure if you should take the leap, you should take a chance or risk on yourself. And that I've had many of those instances where it's like, well, the worst thing they can say is no. And if they say yes, how many doors can open up for me just putting myself out there? And more often than not, it's paid off.
Right.
That's exactly it right there.
Say what you've said about, your biggest fear being,
just being 90 and thinking back, man, if I would have tried this,
time's
if
up.
I would have tried that, if you want to do something, go for it. Find out. If it doesn't work out, you learned. If it does work out, hell yeah, you could potentially change your life.
I'll say this. I have met and have worked with and am working with a lot of really cool individuals right now and in the past. Some individuals who I probably never would have met unless I would have taken this leap. And with the people who I've met and who I'm working with now, it's opened up doors for not just business, but like for life, like a lot of different life opportunities. And so I'm like, well, business has been open for, let's see, it will be the end of year 3, the end of October. It's like, it's just been 3 years. You think about, well, if I keep putting myself out there, what's going to happen these next 3 years? You're never going to know unless you just do it and put yourself out there.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
And then stacking it up with time.
Yeah.
Like you said, you've like
reps.
Think of and I have no idea, but like if we did this for 3 years, like because we started this at the beginning of the summer, maybe.
Yeah, that's about right.
Beginning of the summer, like where could we be in 3 years?
Yeah, you just started.
And maybe it's nothing, and we just keep doing it for fun and whatever, and that because that is what we're doing it for. But it's like, man, 3 years, like that's a long time to be putting in the work.
Well, and something I've learned is you can do all the planning in the world, but the plans will change, as you go. What year 1, or I should say year 2 looked way different than year 1. Year 3 looked way different than year 2. I'm about to make my first hire, which I'm ecstatic about. I know that's going to make the next few years different. I might have to make some business decisions, and I might have to pivot maybe what I had in my mind based off of what works and what doesn't work. I think the thing I just heard on the drive over here was one of the worst things you can do when you have your own business, your own brand, is if something's not working, to double down on it. You want to double down on what is working based off the feedback you're getting from the consumers or whatever. Double down on that. And then if you have something that's not working, don't be prideful and say, well, I'm just going to keep doing this and maybe it'll change. Like, you might have to pivot, and if you're able to pivot and be more flexible to new ideas, then you're putting yourself in a better position.
But it starts by just getting out there.
You have to get out there and see what works.
Yep.
Totally agree.
Yep, you just got to get started.
That's right.
Well, Connor, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's great to see, especially young people in Wichita, really taking the leap, really getting after it. And
it's
just
cool.
Taking advantage of their life. Like you said, we live one time, take advantage of it.
Yep.
Congratulations. It's really awesome, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
I do want to, where can we find you on social media?
So Elite PT Wichita, that's the Instagram and Facebook handle. I have it posted on my personals as well, but Elite PT Wichita. I try to post once, if not twice a week, of whether it's tips, tricks, whatever it is to maybe help prevent an injury or treat an injury. I'll do a lot of videos of me working with other clients, and then as a voiceover explain what I'm doing and maybe what I'm trying to accomplish with the said movements that we're doing. But Elite PT Wichita, that's something that I'm trying to grow since from the first 2.5 years, my social media presence was just god awful. So now that's something that I'm trying to improve upon.
Awesome.
Good deal.
Well, I think anybody who listens to this that stays active and takes care of their body is really going to learn something. So Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And congrats on the family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Connor.
Yeah.